MMA athletes are some of the most well-trained individuals in the entire world. Using both agility and strength, they must come out victorious against their competitor in the ring. While most of them leave this skill at the arena, some take it too far and become a menace to society. And one of these cases is War Machine, which we'll be discussing today in depth. In Western culture, we tend to gravitate towards people with extreme personalities. The more loud and outspoken they are, the more likely we are to prop them up and make them celebrities. And this is very evident in the MMA. More specifically, the fighter War Machine, which of course isn't actually his birth name, but would become infamous in and out of the mixed martial arts community, as we will soon discover. Today I will explore the life and mind of this fighter. Jonathan Paul Koppenhaver was born and raised in Simi Valley, California. The eldest of 3 children, Jonathan often found himself raising his siblings, since his parents divorced when he was very young. His mother was a drug addict and his father died of a heart attack in front of his very eyes when he was only 13, watching the light leave his eyes as he attempted to perform CPR. After this, Jonathan spent the rest of his childhood with his mother and stepfather, neither of whom he got along with. In 2000, Jonathan was sent off to the Citadel, a military academy in Charleston, South Carolina. He was there for 2 years before being expelled for what the school only described as poor behavior. It's unclear exactly what he did to get kicked out, although we do know that Jonathan got into at least one physical altercation with his stepfather over tuition. This was an early example of Jonathan's anger issues, but soon he would find a place where he could let out these emotions: the octagon. Jonathan began his MMA career in 2004 in Tijuana, Mexico under his nickname War Machine. But his big break came when he appeared as a fighter on season 6 of the show, The Ultimate Fighter. He proved to be a very skilled foe with a record of 14 wins to 5 losses by the end of his career. Jonathan's anger definitely added to his success in the ring, and to show his commitment to the job in 2009, due to a legal dispute with TNA Wrestling, he legally changed his name to War Machine. At the same time as the name change, War Machine decided to start up a secondary job alongside his fighting career, one in the adult film industry. According to his brother Michael, Jonathan was having sex multiple times a day with multiple different women already, so it wasn't much of a jump for him to be filmed on camera. During his time in the adult film industry, he performed in 12 pornographic movies. And at this time, during a photo shoot with Hustler magazine, he met his soon-to-be girlfriend, Christy Mack. Christy started her career as a nude tattoo model before moving on to adult films. When she and War Machine began their relationship, on the outside they seemed like a power couple. They made frequent public appearances together, and Mack attended every single one of War Machine's fights for moral support. However, the honeymoon period of this relationship was soon to end when Mack revealed that War Machine had frequent violent mood swings, was constantly verbally and physically abusive, yelled all the time, and belittled her for her porn career despite once partaking in the same job himself. It would be great to say that at this point they broke up and went their separate ways, and moved on with their lives. But unfortunately, the truth is much more violent. But that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who has seen War Machine's rap sheet. Now, before we continue, I feel it's important to take a step back and look at some of War Machine's past troubles with the law. Due to his well-known tendency to erupt in violent bursts of anger, War Machine has had a long history of arrests. On September 2nd, 2007, he was arrested for choking a man to the point of unconsciousness during a fight that broke out in Las Vegas. In that instance, he managed to get away with only 3 years of probation and 30 hours of community service. That probation was later extended when he was charged with assault and battery after getting into another fight on February 22nd, 2008. Quite possibly the worst of these prior crimes came in August of 2010 when he got into 2 separate fights in 2 separate San Diego bars, one with a bouncer and another with a bartender. For this, he was sentenced to a year in county jail, but that sentence would later be extended to 2 years due to his continued violent behavior behind bars. During this time, War Machine kept a blog which he wrote by dictating entries to a friend on the outside week by week. In this blog, he made the baffling decision to compare his struggles to the Jews in Nazi Germany and the slaves in colonial America. On other occasions, he would brag about all the women he has had intercourse with over the years and how that he would continue once he got out. which goes along with his obsession with being an alpha male. While most people tried to avoid fights in prison, he made it very clear to the other inmates that he was not to be messed with, and would use his personal fighting skills against anyone that went up against him. This would explain his extended sentence. Even with all the criminal actions War Machine has committed in the past, his worst crimes were still to come. As he would be released from prison, it was clear that he had not learned his lesson, and would soon enough take his pent-up frustration out on the woman he once loved. We'll learn more about this after a brief word from our sponsor. Ever since this illness came to town, I've been locked in this room by myself. Friends stopped coming by a couple days ago. I hope they're alright. The only thing that's been able to let me keep my mind off things is by listening to audiobooks on Audible. Audible is the leading provider in spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests. What I personally like about Audible is that you can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. By clicking the link in the description to audible.com/GFM or texting GFM to 500-500, you'll be able to get a free trial including an audiobook of your choice. With your trial, I'd suggest checking out The Next Pandemic, which goes in depth about the most deadly diseases in history to help us understand how that knowledge translates to our modern world. Definitely worth a listen. So again, if you want to try Audible for yourself, click on the link in the description, audible.com/GFM, or text GFM to 500-500. After nearly 2 years in jail, War Machine was out and ready to be a member of society, at least according to him.
Jail is kind of like insulates you like a bubble, and nothing's real. You know, when you get out and you realize what really happened, and it's just overwhelming, man. And then not to mention, you know, I've been battling with anxiety and depression for years. You know, I take medication for it, so they wouldn't give me the medication inside. So I finally got back on it, you know, out here, but it's hit me really hard, man, and it's hard to explain, but getting out's the hard part.
He was on his proper medication and was ready to start up his professional career again. The thing was, he also admitted to battling with depression and how he felt that things were simpler when he was locked up. While his intentions may have been pure at first, things started to go downhill when his relationship went south with Christy Mack. The two were dysfunctional, but in love. That is, until things became confrontational. This story begins when Mack sent a naked photo of herself to War Machine along with a text reading, "For my sexy Mr. Machine. I needs that," Jonathan replied back. To which she said, "It's all yours." Soon after, War Machine made his way over to Mack's house without her knowledge. The problem with this was that she just so happened to be with another man named Corey Thomas in her bedroom. Needless to say, things were only going to go downhill from here. Without permission, War Machine broke into the house suddenly and unexpectedly, and that is when he saw the love of his life with another man in the bedroom. The former fighter couldn't be reasoned with in a jealous rage as he charged at them. War Machine immediately began beating Thomas senseless, leaving him with such injuries as a broken nose, a dislocated shoulder, and multiple bite marks all over his body. When he was finished, War Machine intimidated Thomas into fleeing the scene, leaving the psychotic attacker alone with Mack. According to a statement she later made on Twitter, War Machine forced her to disrobe and take a shower while he watched. He then proceeded to beat her, leaving her with a broken nose, several broken bones around her eyes, missing teeth, a fractured rib, and a ruptured spleen. After that, using a knife he obtained from the kitchen, he stabbed her multiple times before cutting off her mohawk. Thankfully, as the attack was taking place, there was a moment in which Jonathan was distracted, at which point Mack ran for her life and quickly hurried to the home of a neighbor to seek much-needed help. Once there, she called the police, but War Machine was long gone by the time they arrived at the scene of the crime. The most baffling part about this story is that the day after the attack, as Mack is being treated in the hospital, her and War Machine were exchanging text messages about how much they loved one another, even after what transpired the night before. Even if she was still transfixed with her abuser at the time, the police were now involved, and their first priority was finding out where the disgraced fighter was hiding out. What followed after that was a manhunt for the former MMA fighter that lasted a whopping 10 days. he managed to flee a surprising distance before finally getting caught, with his downfall coming after getting into yet another fight with a woman in a hotel in California.
Soon, their prey was in handcuffs. The search for the mixed martial arts fighter included San Diego, with TV's Dog the Bounty Hunter on his trail.
Even when his freedom depended on it, it seemed like he just couldn't help himself from falling to the violent urges. War Machine was arrested on August 15th, 2014. The tale of an MMA fighter beating up his porn star girlfriend for being with another man went viral all across the internet, with almost every single newspaper around the world reporting on the story. Many made light of the serious crimes committed by saying that both parties were merely doing their jobs. As Jonathan sat in his jail cell thinking about all his poor life choices, on October 14th, 2014, the day he was meant to meet with the court to talk about a plea deal, War Machine was found in his cell with a piece of linen wrapped around his neck and hanging from his bunk bed in an apparent suicide attempt. Guards quickly cut him loose and rushed him to the medical ward, where he managed to recover and was placed under suicide watch. In that cell, guards also found a suicide note filled with some incredibly strange and delusional defenses of his actions. Not only did he quote-unquote forgive Mack for cheating on him, he also called himself a good person with a good heart, and said that society has killed men. I was never meant to live in this era anyway. The note also opened and closed with quotes from German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. It started with, "To die proudly when it is no longer possible to live proudly," and ending with, "Verily, I often laugh at the weaklings who think themselves good because they have no claws." With it being clear that he wouldn't take any plea deal as he didn't feel what he did matched the time they offered him, the case went to trial that stretched through 3 painstaking years, as Mack had to relive the horrific night on the stand as her menace watched in amusement. It turns out it took her working with domestic abuse survivors to understand just how brainwashed she had been by War Machine, to the point that she still loved him even after he beat her nearly to death. She had even made an emoji line of herself with busted lips and black and blue eyes to raise money for a domestic abuse charity. War Machine was finally charged in 2017 with 29 felony counts of kidnapping and sexual assault with a weapon. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 36 years. Surprisingly enough, one of the latest developments in the story came in July of 2018, when War Machine became engaged to a woman by the name of Ashley, who had been writing letters back and forth with him while he was in prison. Most of the people that have looked into the story believe Jonathan Copenhaver was just a very disturbed individual that couldn't make it in the real world, and it seems like he will remain behind bars for the remainder of his life. If there's a lesson to be taken away from this story, it should be from Christy Mack. During the trial of War Machine, she made many statements about the importance of abuse victims speaking out against their abusers. If it's possible to gain any sort of positive message from this terrible story, let it be that.
Thankfully, War Machine is going to be in prison for a very long time, and he hopefully won't be hurting any other women anytime soon. And because of that, I don't think we really have to worry much about it. So until next time, thanks for watching.